storytelling aspect of this. Did you get an opportunity to work with how many liberties are you allowed to take when it comes to storytelling?
Yeah, we definitely got to work with the original writers, Ty and Daniel. In fact, before we really started any of the major production, we had to pitch the story through them. So that was something when I was talking with Jamie actually about that. He was like, "Oh, you're going to talk to the writers," and I thought he meant like on the show, not the writers of the books. So the day of, they said, no, the writers of the books, and instantly my anxiety just like went up because I'm going to pitch to the people that created this great universe in book form and on television. So, but they were very nice. They were very down to earth, and not only were they very supportive about hearing the pitch ideas, but they were adding ideas that we put in the game that were awesome. Made suggestions on character things that we hadn't considered, that were like, but of course, that's awesome. So yeah, we worked with them and it was great. And liberties in terms of, what we're doing there, we submitted everything through outgunned. So they looked at it and gave notes and thoughts, and if there were things that were outside that they felt didn't fit in with the universe, we made sure to address those. So I don't think we took many liberties, really. We tried to make it as authentic.
There were a few big asks in the beginning, but they were pretty supportive.
Yeah.
That's the only time I've seen him nervous, to be honest. It's like, in two plus years of working together, he's always very composed, and in that meeting he was actually nervous and somewhat at a loss for words, which is not normal. And he spent the first, probably 10 minutes of the meeting pitching the gameplay because he didn't want to get into the story with the writers, and it was like, dude, it's okay.
The last thing you want to do is lose the faith of the people that have made the thing, right? So, but yeah, I think once we got going with it, it was something that they were really into, really supportive about.
So this is the first IP announced since TellTale reformed in 2019.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about resurrecting the beloved studio and partnering with Tech9?
What part do you want to know about? No, it's hard to believe it's been 4 years, first of all. Like, it feels like, I guess sometimes it feels like 10 years and sometimes it feels like a year, depending. The partnership with Tech9 has been pretty fantastic. I mean, we knew we wanted to work with them probably within an hour of the first studio visit, and played the game, and then spending time with the team. I spent 2 days on the first visit, and the thing that we went to talk to him about originally wasn't really a good fit, but it took us about 2 weeks to call him back and say, hey, we can't do this thing, but like we still really want to do something. Let's talk about that and figure it out. And that turned into the Expanse. So that part went really well. Yeah. Thrilled to be finally shipping it.
Here, you guys are coming back.
We're really happy to be back, and it's nice to finally show a new game, right? Like, it's been a long 4 years with lots of things that nobody planned on, like COVID and other stuff happening in the middle of it. So I feel like there's a 2-year gap in terms of what happened.
For you guys, because you said it was 4 years, it's been kind of hectic and crazy and everything. What were some of the challenges that really kind of slowed things down, or did you just were able to work on this despite all the challenges?
I mean, I'd say the hardest thing was like we were in the middle of trying to scale the team up when the world shut down, and we had to learn how to work remotely. And there was the first few months where we all pretended it would go away. Like, well, we'll just wait. And then time goes by and you're like, we can't really wait anymore. We have to figure this out. And then I think we all kidded ourselves for the next 6 months that we knew what we were doing and how to make remote production and hiring work. And then we got serious about it and started solving the problems. But it was really challenging. I mean, you threw away almost every production methodology, team building, culture building tool that you had, and had to start over and figure out how to put that together. So that's been one of the larger challenges.
So I got to test the first chapter at Tribeca, and it did seem pretty familiar. Like the gameplay, the options and choices affecting everything. Will the gameplay be any different with this new partnership, or it'll be familiar to fans of TellTale?
I think it's an evolutionary evolvement. I mean, our perspective was that we wanted it to be a TellTale story as told by Deck 9. They have their own DNA in terms of how they approach narrative adventure. TellTale has sort of its signature style, and the concept here was really to put those together and see what could be done with it. Frost and his team certainly led the meta in terms of what we were doing and putting it all together.
Yeah, on the gameplay side, I think the 0G is probably the biggest change from something that would be in a TellTale game. That exploration is certainly, I keep saying it's story on the sticks, right? Like that when you're floating around and you're clicking on stuff, you're still talking with people and making decisions, and you're advancing character story. So that is, but it's done through gameplay where you're just floating upside down and landing on walls and walking upside down with mag boots. But you're still talking with your crew, and you're still developing relationships with them, and the things that you collect in the world will affect the story in the future. So, you finding something as a scavenger for somebody who's on the ship who's been looking for something, and you find it, that's going to affect how they, view you, and it will change the story and maybe even affect lives when you find those things.
Why did you land on Camina Drummer?
She's my favorite character from the show, first and foremost. I think there was that. Her backstory wasn't really explored in the show at all, and in the books, she's not as big of a character, really, because the show she's an amalgam of, Michiopah and Bull and like a couple others. So you have a world that's very fleshed out in terms of backstories for like the Rocinante crew. We know what happened to Amos. We know what happened to pretty much everybody that's on that crew. But Drummer was one of the few that didn't really have a background that's been explored. So there's two advantages to that. One, if you've never heard of the Expanse or seen it or anything, a prequel is a really good spot to get in because it's not in media res, right? Where you come in and you're like, what's happening? What? I don't, this is a good spot as a way to get in. So that's one.
Just made me want to watch it.
Yes. So, yeah, and here's the good thing is if you are a fan and you have watched it, you can get a background on a character that you know and love, and you can also make some changes to that character because you want to have an arc, right? You want to say, like, at the beginning, she's this. And Cara herself, when we're going through it, she's like, I love how she's not dead inside yet. I love how she's, has hope and, ambition and things like that. And over time, she becomes this hardened badass. And when you see her in the show, you don't know the background as to why. Now you can play through it. So that was kind of the hope with picking her as a character.
It's like there's an open question when you watch the show for her, like, wait, why is she so angry and dead inside? We should know more about that. And we actually, when we picked her, we had no idea where the series was going to end, or our conversation with the show guys was like, "Oh yeah, that's great. You'll be really happy when the season ends." And we're like, "What? Huh?" And then we finally got to see it. It's like, "Oh, hey, we picked well."
Yeah.
So it's definitely she's a good fit. There were a couple characters we discussed, but she really suited the bill and was at the top of the list for everybody.
Yeah.
How do you go about picking IPs and I guess getting like the licensing, and has there ever been a time where like specific characters you're not allowed to use or told to use?
There's things that we want to do that we run into and you can't do them for various reasons. IP's complex and sometimes there are all sorts of weird, well, we don't actually own that part of it. And you're like, well, why not? Like, and then sometimes the way that we want to tell a story in the universe isn't something that's going to work for the owner. So, there are lots of times. We try and pick an IP and figure out how we would approach it before we go and license it. And then we really try and figure out, like, what are the biggest asks we're going to have? Like, how much, like, this is where we really need flexibility from you to do these things. And put those all up front before we ever get into a relationship. So we kind of get the hard stuff out of the way quickly. And the picking, I'd love to tell you there's some process or whatever, but it really comes down to most of us are fans and consume a lot of this content. We normally start with the people we want to work with to build a game, and that becomes a collaborative conversation about which game. And then there's a list, and then we have to go out and figure out, like, what does that cost? Is it available? Could we actually do it? Which talent would we need? All the pieces of it. And then if that all fits, then okay, it happens. We actually started working with Deck 9 on a different IP. That we had to move away from, and we pivoted to Expanse. So there are definitely challenges in terms of figuring it out. I think the thing we ask for the most is we need to be able to tell our own stories. like we can't tell your origin story or the thing that people already know or the thing that people are familiar with. We have to tell a different story, and we need some degree of flexibility to do that.
Yeah, I fell in love with Clementine. At one point, I liked the games more than the show, and I was like, I want Clementine to have her own show. I was like, this is phenomenal.
It's awesome to hear.
And in that same vein, like, what made the Expanse such a good universe to jump into from like the video game standpoint, where other IPs didn't work out that way?
I mean, I think it really just started with love of the show, right? I mean, when it came up, I actually came to it pretty late and just binge watched it when it came up in the meeting. I was like, oh yeah, wait, that's awesome. And there was a desire to do science fiction. You know, we do some genre picking in terms of like, oh, we're doing this other thing over here. We don't do anything that looks like that. We need to do something that's different.
And also, if you look at The Expanse, there are tons of tough choices in that show, like a ton. And that's our format. It's like putting you in the shoes of somebody who has to make a really hard decision that's not easy and will affect the lives of many. Like Drummer, for example, had an opportunity to space Marco and Aros and didn't. That would have been a much different experience if she had, and that affected the lives of billions because of that decision in one airlock in a ship that's very far from Earth. So, you know, there's a lot of different stuff that you can do there and situations you can put somebody in. So that's why The Expanse is such a great kind of universe to play in.
And then I just want to add to that really quick. You know, you guys talked about starting with the character that has like very little background information. Is there anything that like the writers told you that maybe like, oh, maybe this can be a spin-off at some point into their own books or anything like that? Did you collaborate on it?
I don't know. I mean, it's theirs to own, effectively. Like, I would love it if Khan made an appearance in, you know, some prequel book that they had. You know? Great. I would love that.
Yeah, awesome.
But I don't know. We'll see. But certainly we talked about getting the ethos and pathos of these characters to match what, you know, would be in something like their books or their shows. So that fans could say like, yeah, I could see that character being in the show.
I love with sorry, I'm just gonna fangirl a little bit, but with the Batman, like I was telling my boyfriend, like, you have to play this. I was like, it's so messed up. You could be Bruce Wayne and literally steal Selena. So it's like, I love that it's like so like human, like even like little decisions, like, do I take Selena out and betray my friend? Like that little thing can like affect like the end of the game, and it's crazy. So it's phenomenal. I just want to say that.
Can you speak a little bit to working with like Cara Gee on this?
Yeah, I love working with Cara Gee. She was fantastic the entire time. Very professional, very accommodating, and a lot of fun. You know, there was a lot of, the set was a very positive experience with mocap shoots with her because she was so sweet and nice and professional. And you know, sometimes we'll get actors that can't remember their lines, and we have to go through it, and it takes a lot more shots. And Cara was not one of those people. She knew exactly what we needed to do, and she did a ton of research for specific moments in her arc that are very challenging to kind of think about. But she would think about, okay, well, this character is going through this. What research can I do that grounds it in my experience as a human being that I can do research on and understand and see what those people say about those experiences? So when she's coming in, she's very prepared, not only just the memorization, but also the feeling that she wants, you know, people to take away when they're playing through the game.
Is everything outlined from like A to Z, or is there any point where, I guess like as they're writing the game, where like you make a decision and then like later on you're like, oh my god, we have to change this at the end because that can like affect this? Do you kind of go through a maze or world with like
it's mapped out, but there are certainly times where you find things, you know, or you try something, it doesn't work, and you say, okay, what if we do this instead? So we always try to have a map that is, you know, something that will guide us, but sometimes somebody says something on set or does a performance in a different way, and then we'll go back and record a scene to put back in like an earlier episode to set that up properly or add that in. So it can be, I mean, we try to be as organized as we can to figure that stuff out and make sure it's good beforehand, but sometimes good stuff just pops up and then you kind of add that in. So mocap guys hate me because sometimes I'll ad-lib things. I'm like, can you say this for this scene? And they're like, you didn't write that before. And they have to go through a process that is a little bit challenging, but it provides good stuff. So they get it at the end of the day. It's a lot of fun.
I think Cara also ad-libs some of that stuff and says it more the way that she thinks Drummer would.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. You have to make room for that because then she can really own the character when she owns it on the show.
And we had Cara Gee. Are there any kind of like other voice actors from the show that maybe we'll see? Are there possibilities for that?
Yes.
Spoilers? Should
Yes.
we not say that?
I'll just say yes. Yeah.
Okay.
There will certainly be other characters from the show with the original voices of the characters that were in the show.
Excellent. Exciting.
Yeah.
Have there ever been any voice actors that you'd like to get that you can't get? Like, how does that kind of work with the voice actors?
Sometimes there are availability issues and challenges for sure. I don't think there was anybody we went after for this that we didn't get, but that it certainly happens, right? It's challenging, especially when people are busy.
We didn't go after him, but Jared Harris, I think,
Yeah, sure.
would have been great to get him for
Yeah.
Dawes. But
Yeah.
but yeah, for the most part, there's certain. I think with the Expanse, the cool thing about that show, and Cara had sort of echoed this about the video game. She kind of felt like the shoots that she was on, she really felt this great appreciation for what the show was, and that camaraderie was something that the actors had. And so they'll come back to do things. You know, they'll basically come in and say like, yeah, I'll do this, even if they're busy. I mean, we had one actor that was pretty busy and kind of made time to do some VO for us to get it in. So that's the cool part about working on something like The Expanse, which is not only beloved by people, but I think the people that worked on it were big fans.
Everybody that worked on the show that we reached out to was thrilled that they were doing something like that. They got to go back to the universe and the characters. It was one of the more rewarding parts, really.
I would like to know from each of you, what are you most, without spoilers obviously, but what are you most excited to have fans experience?
I think just to meet the rest of the cast of the Artemis. I think there's a lot going on that is fun to explore, and there's a really cool dynamic between the crew there that is something I think fans will really enjoy.
We've brought people to tears with the performances that we've had in The Expanse, and that's with people that had worked on the game, and then some people that didn't as much. And I'm really excited to see how fans react to some of the things that we put Drummer through. It's going to be, I think, a great roller coaster of moments of great things happening for her and moments of things that shape her into who she becomes. And so I'm really excited to see the reactions of people when she goes through those highs and those lows.
Do you ever work closely with, like, say, like a showrunner or like a comic writer or someone, or do they ever have to give input, like, say you have to change this?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with the people who wrote the original books, and they were super collaborative and very positive on, what we were doing and where we were going. They were super great to work with. So yeah, certainly when you have an intellectual property that exists already, you have to work to make sure that the people that helped create it are happy, are going in a good direction.
I guess we also you have to work through the showrunners and outgunned production companies. There are layers of approvals. You send everything over. They have the rights to give comments and notes on the scripts. If we don't agree with them, there's a conversation and you figure it out in terms of solving the problem. But it all went pretty smoothly on this.
Pretty smooth, yeah.
All the notes were really for the better at the end of the day, which is also helpful when you have people that spent 7 years on it. You're like, maybe that's not quite how this would happen with this character. Right. That was Cara's big ask, actually. Sometimes, talent will have specific things that they want when they get involved in a project, and the thing that she asked me for was if she was ever on set and we asked her to do a line or something that she didn't think was right for Drummer, if it would be okay if she called Ty and Daniel to ask them about it. And it's like the easiest thing I've ever agreed to. I'm like, yes, as a matter of fact, please do that. Yeah. Sure.
Very thoughtful, huh?
It was, she's very protective of the character and its integrity. in the universe, which is great. That it really helps when you're working with somebody who feels that way about the idea.
I've met her a few times in interviews in person, and it's so striking how different she is from that character and how bubbly.
Aw.
It was shocking the first time because I'd only known her from the TV series, right? And then to see her in person and talk to her, I'm like, whoa.
Way different.
Yeah.
Very sweet.
It's a little disconcerting to see her shift in and out of character. Like at the press event, she would shift into character for a minute for somebody, and then flip back to the same conversation that you're having about something inane, and you're like, wow, that's really okay.
Yeah, she's really. She cares about that character a lot, and she puts a lot of her heart and soul into it. And I think that was a big reason why she agreed to this. Was I had to pitch the game to her. And the way that I pitched it to her was like I was the DM running her through the game, and she had to make the decisions. So there would be certain points where I'd say like, okay, this guy's in an airlock, what are you gonna do? And she's like, oh. And so the stress that she felt from making these hard decisions, she was like, I'm in, I like this is really good. So that was another one where I was stressed out, like, I hope she likes this, because this is the architect of this character effectively. So yeah, but she liked it, and I think it worked out well.
Do you plan to do any Expanse sequels or any other games you could possibly talk about?
Yeah.
Another Batman?
I mean, no, we can't talk about other games today.
Aw, man.
And we have the DLC coming for Expanse. We like the universe. We have to see what our audience thinks about it. But certainly, like, if there's demand for it, we would revisit the universe. I like it.
Well, you sold me because now, like I said, now I want to check the show out. Yeah, now I'm like, now I gotta
No,
check
it's
it out.
definitely worth checking. Like, I put it off. Like
I saw
said,
the heads flying around. I was like, this is cool.
I was very late to the party, and then watched it on a plane and finished the season before I got off the plane and got home and watched half the second season before I went to
Nice.
bed. I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I like this.
I'm sold.
It's very good. Yeah, I would say it again. You don't have to watch the show to play the game. It still will make sense. It's a prequel. You get there, but it's a lot cooler if you watch it because there's a lot more things that you can that we tip our hat to for the show.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
So much.
Yeah.
Thank you.